On a typical rainy afternoon, the streets of the city were bustling with people hurrying to find shelter from the downpour. Clara, a young aspiring artist with dreams larger than life, was among them. Her canvas bag was slung over her shoulder, weighed down by sketch pads and an assortment of charcoal pencils, a testament to her dedication to her craft. As the rain intensified, Clara dashed into a nearby coffee shop, a quaint little place that hummed with the gentle murmur of conversations and the clinking of coffee cups. The warm, inviting smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air, mingling with the sound of rain pattering against the windows. It was the kind of place Clara loved, where creative thoughts flowed as freely as the coffee. However, her entrance was anything but graceful. In her rush, Clara collided with a well-dressed man who was just about to leave. Her sketchpad flew from her bag, scattering loose papers like leaves in the wind. Mortified, Clara immediately reached out, her arms wrapping around the stranger in a spontaneous and awkward hug, as if that could somehow amend the collision. The man, caught off guard, hesitated for a moment before his arms hesitantly returned the embrace. "It's okay," he chuckled, steadying Clara. "It happens to the best of us." Clara stepped back, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, bending down to gather her scattered art. "I wasn't looking where I was going." "No harm done," the man assured her, helping to pick up the papers. As they stood, he glanced at the sketches. "You're quite talented," he commented, handing her a drawing of the cityscape as seen from the rainy street. "Thank you," Clara replied, tucking her hair behind her ear nervously. "I'm Clara. I'm an artist, or at least I'm trying to be one." "I'm Adrian," he introduced himself, his eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "I own a gallery not far from here. These sketches are really good. Have you ever thought about exhibiting your work?" Clara's eyes widened in surprise. A gallery owner. Here she was, thinking she just made a fool of herself in front of a regular businessman. I have, actually," she admitted, "but I've never really known how to go about it." "Well," Adrian said as he handed her the last of her papers, "why don't you come by my gallery sometime? I'd love to see more of your work. Who knows, maybe there's a spot for you in our next exhibit." Clara nodded, her heart racing with excitement and a touch of fear. "I'd like that," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian smiled, his gaze reassuring. "Great," he said, pulling out a business card and handing it to her. "Come by any time. It was a pleasure to run into you, Clara." As he left the coffee shop, Clara stood by the door, watching the rain outside. She clutched the business card tightly in her hand, a small but significant token that might just be the key to a new beginning. This chance encounter, as chaotic as it was, could perhaps be the break she had been hoping for. The next day, Clara woke up with a feeling of excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time. The previous day's unexpected encounter at the coffee shop replayed in her mind like a scene from a movie. She remembered Adrian's warm smile and the genuine interest in his eyes as he looked at her sketches. It was a small gesture, but to Clara, it felt like a beacon of hope. With renewed vigor, Clara set out to prepare her portfolio. She spent the morning carefully selecting her best works, pieces that captured the essence of her vision as an artist. Each sketch and painting was a part of her, a fragment of her soul laid bare on canvas and paper. She arranged them meticulously, considering how each piece complemented the other, telling a silent story of her journey in art. Later that afternoon, with her portfolio tucked securely under her arm, Clara made her way to Adrian's gallery. The gallery was located in a chic part of the city, its exterior modest yet elegant. As she approached, her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and anticipation. This was her chance to step into the world she had long admired from the sidelines. Stepping inside, Clara was immediately enveloped by the serene ambience of the gallery. The walls were adorned with an array of paintings and sculptures that spoke volumes of the artist's passion and the curator's meticulous selection. Soft lighting highlighted each piece, casting gentle shadows that added to the overall mystique of the place. Adrian greeted her with a warm smile as he emerged from the back office. "Clara, I'm glad you could make it," he said, leading her through the gallery. His presence was calming, and as they walked, he discussed the various artworks, sharing stories about the artists and the inspirations behind their works. Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. It was fascinating to see the world through the eyes of someone so deeply embedded in the art scene. She felt a growing sense of belonging, a feeling that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Finally, they arrived at a small, private viewing area where Clara could showcase her work. With a deep breath, she opened her portfolio and laid out her pieces one by one. Adrian watched silently, his eyes scanning each work with a thoughtful intensity. After a few moments, he spoke. "Clara, your work is impressive," he began, his tone sincere. "You have a unique style. There's a raw emotion in your pieces that's quite captivating." Clara blushed, her hands nervously twisting the strap of her portfolio. "Thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate your feedback," she stammered. Adrian nodded, his gaze still fixed on the artworks. "How would you feel about exhibiting some of these pieces in our upcoming show? I believe they'd add a fresh perspective to our collection." The offer took Clara by surprise, rendering her momentarily speechless. This was more than she had hoped for, an opportunity to not only display her work, but to do so in a space that respected and celebrated art in its many forms. "Yes, I'd love to," she finally managed to say, her voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Excellent," Adrian said with a pleased smile. "I'll help you with the preparations. We'll make sure your debut is nothing short of spectacular." As Clara left the gallery that day, her footsteps felt lighter, and her heart was full. The door to a new chapter in her life had just opened, and for the first time in a long time, she was eager to see what lay ahead. Clara spent the following weeks in a flurry of activity, her days consumed by preparations for the upcoming exhibition. Each morning, she awoke with a purpose, her mind brimming with ideas, and her hands eager to translate them onto canvas. This was her chance to prove herself, to share her vision with the world, and she poured her heart into every brushstroke. Adrian proved to be an invaluable mentor during this time. He visited Clara's studio regularly, offering insights that only someone with his experience could provide. He didn't just critique her work, he helped her understand the deeper aspects of engaging an audience, from the emotional tone of her pieces to the setup of her display. As the day of the exhibition drew nearer, Clara's nerves began to build. Despite Adrian's encouragement and her own hard work, doubts crept into her mind. Was her art good enough? Would people understand her message? To help ease her mind, Adrian arranged a pre-exhibition tour of the gallery. Walking through the space, Clara could visualize where her art would hang, the soft gallery lights casting a gentle glow on her paintings. Adrian discussed the layout, showing her the prime spots where her work would be most visible, reassuring her that her art deserved to be there. "It's all about storytelling," Adrian explained as they walked through the quiet halls. "Each piece tells a part of your story, and this exhibition is your narrative. Think of it as inviting people into your world." Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. Seeing the gallery before the exhibition helped calm her nerves. It made everything feel more real, more achievable. She left the gallery that day feeling more confident, a sense of anticipation replacing some of her earlier apprehensions. The night before the exhibition, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment leading up to this point. She thought about the first day she walked into the coffee shop and bumped into Adrian, the serendipitous meeting that had changed the course of her life. It felt like destiny, a reminder that sometimes the most pivotal moments in our lives come from the most unexpected encounters. The morning of the exhibition, Clara arrived early at the gallery. Adrian was already there, overseeing the final touches. He greeted her with a bright, encouraging smile. "Ready to show the world what you're capable of?" he asked. Clara nodded, taking a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice steady. As the doors opened, people began to flow in. Clara stood by her display, her portfolio of work now hanging proudly on the gallery walls. The initial trickle of guests soon turned into a crowd. Clara watched as people stopped in front of her paintings, their eyes lingering, expressions thoughtful. Adrian stayed close, observing the reactions. Every now and then, he would steer some guests towards Clara, introducing her and explaining the concept behind her work. Clara found herself talking about her art, explaining her techniques and the stories behind each piece. With each conversation, her confidence grew. The night turned out to be a success beyond Clara's wildest dreams. Her work was well received, with several pieces selling before the evening was over. More importantly, she felt a sense of accomplishment and belonging. She was no longer just an aspiring artist. She was a part of the vibrant community that she had long admired from afar. As the exhibition continued, Clara found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. The excitement of seeing people admire her work was unlike anything she had ever felt before. Each time someone paused in front of one of her paintings, tilting their head slightly as if absorbing its story, she felt a sense of pride bubbling inside her. It was a dream come true, something she had imagined countless times, but never thought would actually happen. Adrian stayed nearby, watching over everything with a careful eye. Every now and then, he introduced her to guests, some of whom were well-known figures in the art world. At first, Clara was intimidated, but Adrian's presence made things easier. He had a way of making people feel comfortable. And soon, she found herself engaged in conversations, answering questions about her inspirations and artistic journey. One particular moment stood out. A woman in an elegant dress stood in front of one of Clara's paintings for an unusually long time. Her expression was unreadable, her gaze locked on the canvas. Clara hesitated, but eventually approached her. "Do you like it?" she asked softly. The woman turned, her eyes filled with emotion. "It's beautiful," she said. "It reminds me of a place I used to visit as a child. There's something about the colors, the way the light falls. It feels like a memory I had forgotten." Clara felt her throat tighten. She had always believed that art was meant to evoke feelings, to tell stories beyond words. Hearing this woman's response reassured her that she had succeeded in doing just that. "Thank you," Clara said sincerely. "That means a lot to me." As the evening progressed, Adrian remained close, subtly ensuring that Clara wasn't overwhelmed. He was different from how she had first imagined him, less of a distant gallery owner and more of a mentor, maybe even a friend. At one point, as the crowd grew, Adrian leaned in and whispered, "You're doing great. They love your work." Clara exhaled a small laugh. "I can hardly believe this is happening." Adrian smiled. "Believe it. You deserve it." As the night began to wind down, Clara took a moment to step away from the crowd. She stood near a large window overlooking the city, watching the streetlights flicker in the distance. Her heart was full, her mind still racing with everything that had happened. Adrian joined her, standing by her side. "You did well tonight," he said. She turned to him, eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without your help." He shook his head. "You had the talent all along, Clara. I just helped you find the right place to show it." For a moment, they stood in silence, both looking out at the city. It was a night Clara would never forget. The night her dreams began to take shape. The night she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was finally where she belonged. In the days following the exhibition, Clara's life felt like it had changed overnight. Her artwork had been well received, and several pieces had even been sold. For the first time, she felt like a real artist, not just someone with a dream, but someone whose work had touched people. She was still adjusting to the idea when she received a call from Adrian. "How does it feel to be the talk of the art world?" he teased, his voice warm. Clara laughed. "I think you're exaggerating, but it does feel surreal." "Well, get used to it," Adrian said. "People love your work. In fact, I've had a few inquiries about commissioning you for new pieces. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Commissions? People actually wanted to pay her to create art. She had always hoped for this, but now that it was happening, she wasn't sure if she was ready. That sounds amazing, she said slowly. But what if I mess up? What if they don't like what I create? Adrian chuckled. That's part of being an artist, Clara. Not everyone will love every piece you make, but that doesn't mean you should doubt yourself. Trust your talent. His words reassured her, and after a bit more conversation, she agreed to meet him at the gallery later that week to discuss the details. When the call ended, Clara sat on her small couch, staring at her sketchpad. She had worked so hard to get to this point, yet self-doubt still lingered in the back of her mind. The next morning, Clara decided to take a walk through the city to clear her thoughts. She wandered through the familiar streets, observing the little details she had always loved. The way the sunlight danced on the glass buildings, the laughter of children playing in the park, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from a bakery. She found herself standing in front of Adrian's gallery earlier than planned. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The gallery was quieter than on exhibition night, but the same comforting energy filled the space. Adrian greeted her with a friendly smile. "You're early." Clara shrugged. "I figured I'd get a head start on facing my fears." He chuckled and gestured for her to follow him into his office. There, he laid out a few offers from people interested in her work. As he went over the details, Clara realized something. This wasn't just about painting for herself anymore. People saw something in her art, something that moved them. That was more important than any fear she had. By the end of the meeting, Clara felt a new sense of determination. She agreed to take on her first commission, knowing it was the next step in her journey. As she left the gallery, Adrian's words echoed in her mind. Trust your talent. Maybe for the first time in her life, she was ready to do just that. Clara spent the next few days working on her first commissioned piece. It felt different from painting for herself. There was a sense of responsibility now. Someone was expecting something special, something meaningful. At first, the pressure was overwhelming, and she found herself staring at the blank canvas for hours, unable to start. She paced around her small studio, sipping on tea, trying to find inspiration. But the more she thought about it, the more nervous she became. What if she disappointed the client? What if they regretted choosing her? Doubt crept into her mind, making it hard to focus. Just as she was about to give up for the day, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Adrian. "How's the masterpiece coming along?" She hesitated before replying, still trying to figure it out. A few seconds later, her phone rang. Adrian's voice was calm as he said, "Clara, I can hear the stress in your message. You're overthinking it, aren't you?" She sighed. "Maybe a little." He chuckled. "Come to the gallery. I want to show you something." Curious and desperate for a break, Clara grabbed her coat and headed out. When she arrived, Adrian was waiting for her with a small notebook in his hand. He led her to the back, where they sat near a collection of unfinished paintings from various artists. "These," he said, gesturing to the canvases, "are works in progress. Some of them have been sitting here for years, waiting for the artist to return. Others will never be completed." Clara frowned. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because every artist struggles," Adrian explained. "Even the best of them. Sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves, thinking we have to be perfect. But art isn't about perfection. It's about expression." Clara looked at the paintings again, realizing he was right. She had been so focused on making the painting perfect that she had forgotten why she painted in the first place. Adrian smiled. "Let's do something. Take the night off. Stop worrying about what the client will think, and just paint something for yourself. Something that makes you happy." At first, Clara hesitated. Wouldn't that be a waste of time? But as she thought about it, she realized she had nothing to lose. That night, she went back to her studio and did exactly what Adrian suggested. She let go of expectations, allowing herself to paint freely. She experimented with colors, played with brush strokes, and didn't stop to judge her work. By the time she stepped back, she realized something incredible. The painting in front of her wasn't just beautiful, it was alive. It had emotion, movement, and most importantly, it felt like her. She smiled to herself. Maybe Adrian was right. Maybe the secret to great art wasn't about making something perfect, but making something real. The next morning, Clara woke up feeling refreshed, a rare feeling after the stress she had been carrying for days. She stretched and looked at the painting she had created the night before. It wasn't what she had originally planned for the commission, but it had something special, something real. She ran her fingers lightly over the dried paint, feeling the texture of each brushstroke. For the first time in days, she wasn't doubting herself. She was proud of what she had created. Taking a deep breath, Clara picked up her phone and sent a picture of the painting to Adrian. "What do you think?" She expected a simple reply, but within minutes her phone rang. "This is incredible," Adrian said, his excitement clear in his voice. "Clara, this is some of your best work yet." His words sent a wave of relief through her. "But, do you think the client will like it? Are you happy with it?" he asked instead. She hesitated for a moment before answering, "Yes." "Then that's what matters," Adrian said. "Trust me, when you put your heart into something, people can feel it. You just have to believe in it first." Encouraged by his words, Clara decided it was time to present the painting to the client. She carefully packed it up, her heart pounding as she made her way to the gallery, where Adrian had arranged for the client to meet her. When she arrived, Adrian gave her a reassuring nod before leading her into the private viewing room. The client, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, was already waiting. Clara set the painting down and slowly removed the covering, revealing her work. For a moment, there was silence. The client simply stared at the painting, her expression unreadable. Clara's palms grew sweaty. Had she made a mistake? Then, to her surprise, the woman's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the canvas, as if she wanted to touch it but didn't dare to. "This," the woman whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "This is exactly what I wanted. It's perfect." Clara blinked in surprise. "You really like it?" The woman turned to her, smiling warmly. "I love it. It feels personal, like it was made just for me. I can't explain it, but it speaks to me in a way I didn't expect." Relief flooded through Clara, and she smiled back. She had been so worried about meeting expectations, but in the end, following her instincts had been the right choice. As the woman finalized the purchase, Adrian gave Clara a proud look. "See," he said, "I told you. When art is made with heart, people can feel it." Clara laughed softly. "I guess I just needed to believe in myself." "You did," Adrian replied. "And now so does everyone else." As Clara left the gallery that day, she realized something important. This wasn't just about one painting. It was about her journey as an artist, and for the first time, she felt like she was truly on that journey. In the days following the sale of her painting, Clara felt like she was living in a dream. The overwhelming fear and doubt that had once held her back were slowly fading away. For the first time, she truly believed in herself as an artist. It wasn't just about selling a painting. It was about realizing that her work could touch people, make them feel something deep inside. One afternoon, as she sat in her small studio, sketching the world outside her window, her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. "Meet me at the gallery. I have something special to show you." Curious, Clara grabbed her coat and headed out. The walk to the gallery felt different this time. She wasn't the same nervous girl who had once hesitated to step through its doors. She had changed, grown. When she arrived, Adrian was waiting for her with a knowing smile. He gestured for her to follow him into the main exhibition hall. As she stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. There, on one of the feature walls, was a section dedicated entirely to her work. Several of her paintings hung in perfect alignment, framed beautifully under a spotlight that made them shine. A small plaque bore her name, Clara Williams, Emerging Artist Collection. She turned to Adrian, her eyes wide. What? What is this? He chuckled. This is what happens when an artist finds their voice. After your first sale, more people started asking about your work, so I decided it was time to give you a permanent space here. Clara could hardly believe it. She reached out, running her fingers along the edge of one of the frames. Seeing her work displayed like this, celebrated like this, was more than she had ever dreamed. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Adrian smiled. Then don't say anything. Just take it in. You earned this. For a long moment, she simply stood there, staring at her art, letting the reality of it sink in. This wasn't luck. This wasn't just a happy accident. This was hers. As she turned back to Adrian, she gave him a grateful smile. Thank you. For everything. He shook his head. You did this, Clara. I just gave you a push. They stood there for a while, side by side, looking at the paintings. And in that moment, Clara knew this was only the beginning. She had started this journey with nothing but a dream and a sketchpad. Now she had a place in the art world, a growing audience, and most importantly, confidence in herself. Walking out of the gallery that day, Clara felt lighter, her heart full of hope. No matter what the future held, she was ready for it.